I've got a wood burning stove. I've had one for about 50 years. I first got one when I was living in northern Norway, and I loved it so much that when I got back to the UK, I tried to find one and nobody had heard of wood burning stoves. They didn't import them. I really had to go to some considerable effort to find a wood burner to put in my house. Since then, wood burning stoves have become very popular indeed in the UK. I mean, my neighbour's got one, the bloke over the road's got one, people down the road have got them, there's logs being delivered everywhere. Actually, I think they're missing a trick because I go out and I chop my own logs. I've always done that. I've never bought wood in my life. When I was in northern Norway, I really enjoyed getting out there in the snow and chopping logs and feeling fantastic and warm and alive. And to me, that's part of it. The day I have to go and buy wood, probably the wood burning stove won't appeal so much. But I now know that there is a concerted lobby, if you like, to get rid of wood burning stoves, to ban them because they are dirty polluters. And I fully agree with that. It's not nice at all. When I burn my wood burning stove for a few hours on a cold winter's evening, it is tinged with guilt. I sit there in front of the warm wood burning stove, but there's an icicle in my heart. Now, as far as pollution goes, it is really those little particulates, the things below 2.5 milligrams, which are the important ones. These are the ones that are causing the damage to people's respiratory systems. Same sort of thing you get from burning diesel and so on. The only thing that I can console myself is the fact I live on the top of a hill. I've got a tall chimney, and most of the time, if the wind is blowing, it's blowing it far away to such havens such as Gatwick Airport or the M25. And my little particulates aren't going to make a big difference there, are they? But I've got another excuse up my sleeve, because while I'm burning my little bit of wood in my wood burning stove, up there just east of Leeds is Drax Power Station, which is burning the equivalent of the total UK output for timber in 1 year. And if you think about just how much wood that is, if you look at the New Forest, for example, it could burn through the whole of the New Forest in just 2 years. But of course we don't do that. We don't burn the New Forest. Why would you burn the New Forest? People enjoy going there for a holiday. A New Forest without any trees, I mean, what's the point? You might as well go to Milton Keynes. So where does this timber come from that they make into pellets and burn in Drax? Well, some of it comes from Canada, some of it comes from America, some of it comes from the Baltic regions, and even as far away as Portugal and South America. But don't worry, they're not just cutting down trees to burn. This is trees that they've cut down anyway, and this is all the little spindly bits and the bits that they can't use for lumber. So this you might call the waste products, the stuff that they might otherwise use for chipboard and so on. This all comes over all this kind of what you might call scrap wood, and it's all minced up by millions of eco-friendly little squirrels who are munching it up to make it into wood pellets. No, they don't do that. No, they've got some machine that does it. But a nice idea though, wouldn't it, having all those squirrels do it? But whatever they do, they make it into pellets, and they've decided to up their game with pellets because they now intend to produce twice as many wood pellets as they're already producing, which means a lot more timber coming in. And what they hope to do with those extra wood pellets is to export them, to sell them to other wood burning, pellet burning power stations around the world. So it may well be that all this stuff is being shipped over to our country, sent to Drax or wherever they make those wood pellets, make them into wood pellets, and then ship them back out to all these other countries. Who knows? Now, there is no getting away from it that when you burn timber, you produce CO2, and Drax is the biggest single producer of carbon dioxide in the country. So how on earth is this eco-friendly or green? Basically, if you're planting new trees, those new trees are going to absorb the carbon from the wood you burn. So long as they keep putting trees back, everything is hunky-dory. It becomes carbon neutral. The only problem is there's another factor involved, and that is time. It takes years for those trees to reach maturity and absorb all that carbon that you've produced by burning the previous trees. If we're in the middle of a climate emergency and time is a factor here, then I'm afraid we got a problem. And all that I said about neutralising the carbon by growing new trees doesn't take account of transporting those trees across the ocean, because it's not being done in sailing ships, and the people cutting them down are not using battery powered chainsaws. So when those trees arrive at Drax, they've already got embedded carbon in them. So calling it carbon neutral or eco-friendly is a complete con, and you might wonder why the politicians that use our taxpayers' money to subsidise this operation can't see that. Well, in fact, they can. These politicians have gone to those annual climate meetings and they've signed up to binding agreements whereby they will pay fines if they don't do something. So being able to tick a box there and say, okay, we've closed down a coal-fired power station, we've opened up a pellet burning power station, so therefore we qualify carbon neutral, thank you very much, sir. And this is the kind of con that is going on all around the globe all the time. This greenwashing, this idea that we're cutting carbon emissions by doing these, what are no more than publicity stunts, really. And a sure sign that even the politicians know this is a con is that Kwasi Kwarteng, remember him, proposed that they should cut the subsidy to Drax, or at least reduce it. And when he did that, the share price plummeted, the markets panicked, as they do whenever Kwasi Kwarteng opens his mouth. And then they decided, oh no, we're only joking, we'll continue the subsidies, and the share price went up again. And I wonder who had prior knowledge of that announcement. I wonder if anybody made any money out of that fall in the share price and that sudden rise again. Now, supporters of Drax, who would be the shareholders obviously, would say that it's not to worry, because what you don't understand, Roger the Dodger, is that we're embarking on this carbon capture scheme. What we intend to do is drive a big pipeline under the North Sea and take all the carbon that's produced by Drax and pipe it under the sea and store it in those caverns that we've extracted gas and oil from, so it'll be safely buried away there for 1 million years, and who knows what carbon turns into if it's buried away. Coal, oil, oh, they can use it all again then. But of course, large-scale carbon capture is really only a pipe dream. I mean, nobody's managed to do it. And because they haven't done any more trials on this, and they certainly haven't put in a planning application to start building that tunnel under the North Sea, you might as well look at this as the subterranean HS2. It ain't gonna happen. And I wouldn't imagine the shareholders are too unhappy about that, because at the moment, Drax is copying £1.6 million of taxpayers' money in subsidies every single day. Where does that money come from? Well, it's loaded onto yours and mine electricity bill, whether you like it or not. But there is good news here, because in 2027 it is proposed that Drax is going to have to stand on its own 10 feet or whatever it's got. And by that time the subsidies will be cut and it should be washing its face, except of course it won't, because without those subsidies it cannot survive. So what it's asking for is a guaranteed electricity price. And if it gets that guaranteed electricity price to carry it forward beyond 2027, that will be the equivalent of every single person in this country paying 500 quid to Drax. And don't forget, this is for something that is not proven to be eco-friendly, it's not even that viable, and it only produces around 6% of our total electricity requirement. So that's a hell of a lot of trouble to go to, isn't it? Closing down coal-fired power stations, turning them into wood pellet burners, only to find that the environmental impact is the same or even worse.